What's up, everyone, and welcome to FoundFlix. On this Cine Explained, we're looking at Immaculate, where a woman of devout faith is warmly welcomed to the picture-perfect Italian countryside, where she is offered a new role at an illustrious convent. But it becomes clear to Cecilia that her new home harbors dark and horrifying secrets. Immaculate is the latest in a very long line of nun-based horror films, and many do tread familiar ground. Churches are bad. The same can be said for Immaculate. It is quite by the numbers and doesn't offer anything new in the well-worn subgenre. It's very simple overall, in spite of its wacky late story reveal, and it's quite lacking in almost every aspect. When it comes to scares, there's not much to offer here, with only a few sprinkled in over the short runtime. Characters are paper thin too. Sure, Sweeney and co are fine here, but there is almost no characterization whatsoever, and that makes it quite difficult to even care what befalls our characters. Ultimately, it's just bland and boring. Although there are some story aspects left in the air, including what happens at the ending. Just what does she birth? So let's check out Immaculate, breaking down the story, including the convent's sinister master plan, and explaining the ending. Late at night, a troubled Sister Mary prays to a painting of the Virgin Mary. She looks to be trying to sneak away from the convent, getting her luggage packed, and removes her habit. She tiptoes into Mother Superior's room, quietly retrieving a massive set of keys. She runs out to the courtyard in a full sprint, but she's been made as floodlights blast on. She makes it to the front gate and fiddles with the keys, trying different ones to get it unlocked, seeing something approaching in the fog. She turns around and a group of hard-looking nuns dressed in black are in hot pursuit. She can't get the gate open and struggles to squeeze through the gap. She does make it to the other side, but they get her leg, yanking her back. They painfully snap her leg, and well, so much for that escape attempt. She awakens in a coffin, dirt pouring through the slats, being buried alive, no doubt. She keeps screaming and shouting fruitlessly for help, and her match extinguishes. Man, these nuns do not mess around, huh? We then meet naive Sister Cecilia, who has come to Italy thanks to an opportunity with a local church. I'm sure you can imagine which one. They just got a new opening. The officers press her on her decision to come here, and she counters she doesn't think of it as a real decision. She truly feels this is her calling. She meets a deacon who drives her out to her new digs, way out in the country. It's quite a breathtaking, but at least slightly foreboding compound. Mother Superior warmly greets her in Italian, which Cecilia doesn't understand. Isabel translates for her, and begrudgingly takes her to her room. She fills her in on the place's long history, and now is dedicated to helping elderly sisters transition to heaven. She also mentions some long unused catacombs under the building, which is strictly forbidden. Isabel isn't exactly the friendliest, insultingly calling Cecilia sweet. She also doesn't feel that she's here for the right reasons. Sure, this must feel all quite romantic to her, but the work they do here is very important. She even gives her an out. She hasn't taken her vows yet, so she can still leave here with God's forgiveness. She is unfazed, believing that she is sufficiently prepared to take on her nunly duties. While in the toilet, she makes a new friend who apparently is not a fan of boundaries. Gwen is unbothered and strikes up a casual conversation. We learn that Cecilia is from Michigan, and she used to work in a parish there. It unfortunately closed down due to low attendance, and this struck Cecilia hard. She considered the church her home, and she felt lost until Father Tedeschi reached out with this opportunity. Gwen scoffs that he has a real talent for sniffing out broken birds. She didn't mean to offend her, but everyone here is either a head case or a runaway. Cecilia asks which she is, Gwen responding both. The time comes for Cecilia's vows ceremony, everybody standing to attention as she slides down the aisle in a fancy get-up. She meets the Cardinal and Sal in person, both delighted to have her here. She's bestowed a rosary and asked to live her life by the important ideals of a nun: poverty, chastity, and obedience. Fun! She immediately agrees, and to make it official, gives the Cardinal's ring a smooch. They hold a celebratory dinner at a big-ass cross table, and she and Sal have a chat. She isn't quite feeling like this is her home, and he tells her that it is for sure. He admits to feeling the same when he first got here, and in fact, he started with a career in science. He did that for 20 years, but found himself disappointed. He didn't understand the world anymore after all that time. God showed him the path that brought him here, where he's meant to be. Cecilia has a similar story, and learned of a moment that changed her life. As a child, she would always walk over a frozen over river. No matter how cold, she would take her gloves off and hold them on the ice until she lost feeling. One time, the ice broke, and she fell into the freezing water, and even technically died for 7 minutes. Her being saved, she believes, is for a grander reason, but she's not quite sure what it is just yet. Later that night, Cecilia is cleaning up in the bathroom, and hears ominous music in the distance. She follows the sounds to the chapel, hearing chanting in Latin. She ventures deeper inside, coming to someone lying in a crucifix position on the ground dressed in black. She approaches approaches, asking if they're okay. They slowly turn, seeing they are wearing that same red mask from the opening. Mother Superior gives her a startle, and she explains that she heard crying in here. Mama grabs a big spike from a display and realizes that it belonged to the J-Man himself. She tells her that it's their job to suffer in his name, calling it a gift. Cecilia suddenly gets woozy, whispering voices growing louder. They start echoing away, and she falls unconscious. She finds herself in a confession booth and spills what she thought was too much drinking causing her to faint. She's afraid that she's already messed up and wants to be here more than anything. The father just keeps staring forward in silence. She keeps blubbering, and he finally turns to eye her and then fades away into darkness. She leans in closer to the grate, but there's nothing there. Hands burst through the walls behind her, and she is suddenly in a room on a gurney. Several of the red masked peeps are there. Hands jam in her mouth and hold her down as she struggles to get free. One lifts a knife, stabbing it into her belly, and she wakes up back in her room. It appears that someone is looming in the corner, yet when clicking on the lamp, they vanish. Things sure got screwy here out of nowhere. The girls are brought together to hear more words of wisdom from Mother Superior. You know, God is great, God is good, Gwen chuckles. They divide the room in half for their daily chores, and Gwen is bummed when they are assigned Isabel. She guides them through the major tasks here, like tending with patients, how to do the laundry correctly, and cutting the head off of a chicken. Cecilia starts getting settled in, shown via montage set to a song from the soundtrack to the Red Queen Kills 7 Times. I was caught off guard by this, like, wait a minute, why did that sound familiar? Check it out for some real giallo. It's her turn to chop the chicken, but finds that she cannot do it. During laundry, she spots Isabel glowering as usual, and she vanishes amongst the drying sheets. In bed, Cecilia gets a rude awakening. Things are eerily quiet, and scissors start rising behind her in shadow. She darts awake to a nun there chopping at her with scissors. She snatches a lock of her hair, mumbling, "Saint of us all, adore you." She assumes that she's just having medical-related issues and tucks her back into bed. When placing the covers over her, her feet poke out from underneath, and she spots something strange. What looks like cross symbols branded into her soles. She brings this up to Gwen later, and they agree that this place is not exactly as they imagined it. For her, at least, it's better than where she came from, as here they get everything. There's nothing to worry about. Sure. Cecilia is confused, so she doesn't believe in God? Of course she does. Life is cruel, and only a man could be responsible, she laughs. Cecilia tosses her cookies, and suddenly isn't feeling well. They fetch the doctor to get her checked out, and she impatiently waits for the results. She spots someone outside, wistfully wandering through the laundry lines, and a bird smashes into the window with a loud, bloody thump. The mother calls for her as the bird lets out its final death twitch. Not a good omen, probably. She's treated to an interrogation from the head trio, beginning by reminding her of her vows. Cecilia insists that she has been following them, and no, hasn't been involved in any carnal congress. She doesn't know what's going on here, but we are well aware that she is pregnant. Miraculously, it appears, as she is medically still a virgin as well. They do an ultrasound, and she does indeed have a bun in the oven to her shock. Although to the others, she has been blessed with a miracle from God himself. Sal brings up that whole God saving you thing, and certainly this must be the reason why. Immaculate conception. She doesn't look happy about it, however, getting paraded out in a fancy dress, tears streaming down her face. The whole congregation sing for the little miracle. Gwen looks upset too, but not so much Isabel, just her typical cold, dead-eyed stare. The pregnancy continues, accompanied by morning sickness. What is less usual is that she discovers she's hacked out a tooth amongst her sick. Cecilia is now treated like royalty by the others, everyone standing to attention when she enters the dining room. Gwen looks a bit bothered, and she takes a seat next to her friend. Mama comes in with a special plate of food for her. There is no working for Cecilia. Her only job is the baby. Gwen sneers. How long until they start calling her Queen Mary? She's not the only one jelly of Cecilia's new station, which she finds out while trying to relax in the bath. Isabel sneaks in and shoves her under the water. She struggles against her and bites her wrist, getting free. Isabel dives in the water and gets her in a chokehold, shouting it was supposed to be me! Others soon arrive to her aid, pulling the crazed girl away. She shouts after, "You have to try again with me!" They get Cecilia checked out, and luckily the baby is okay. Praise be. But Cecilia points out she isn't okay, and brings up what Isabel said. Sal dismisses it as her own battling with mental illness for years, and seeing her clearly triggered something. She stresses that it is pretty serious. She did try to drown her after all. He agrees, promising it will never happen again. She's starting to become suspicious of her caretakers, and wants to see another doctor, and go to a real hospital. They feel that she needs to stay here. Hospitals aren't safe, they claim, in spite of her puking one of her teeth out. Stuck here, she glumly walks through the corridors. Up on the second floor, she sees those same red-masked nuns. Moments later, a body plummets from the roof, and you already know it's Isabel. Yeah, she tripped, I'm sure. During her funeral, funeral, Gwen snaps, telling Cecilia to open her eyes about this place, and how can she trust what is growing inside of her. Cecilia starts to offer, well, maybe God is behind this, and she interrupts, he's got nothing to do with this. Sal asks what's going on, and Gwen gets bristly, addressing the crowd. Cecilia is pregnant, and Isabel is dead. Something is going on here. She accuses the head honchos of being full of baloney, and she gets strong-armed away. Well, probably the last we saw of her, and I'm not sure what she was trying to accomplish there. If you are actually worried that they are a threat, then why make a scene in the first place? Surefire way to get yourself killed. Cecilia is unable to sleep, pondering and emotional in bed. The chain on that painting snaps, and she finds a message behind it from the room's previous tenant, Mary. It leads to a Bible verse warning that Satan himself often masquerades as an angel of light, and that's obviously what's going on here. She goes to check out Gwen's room, finding it empty. Out in the hall, she comes across another candle dancing. She creaks open a door to their meeting room. She takes a letter opener to get a drawer unlocked, retrieving her personal file. They have done quite a bit of research on her, including clippings about her escapades, and even what looks like her DNA records. She's stopped by a door creaking and distant chatter. She opens yet another door. Jeez, how many is she gonna open in this sequence alone? Good God, man, it's a lot of doors. Outside, she hears some alarming metallic scraping and anguished wailing. She finds the source of the sound and peeks through a keyhole, seeing the Red Mask gang have Gwen strapped in a chair. As punishment for her speaking out, they proceed to cut her tongue right out. Well, that's what you get for talking nonsense, or really the truth in this case. She backs up right into another lady who grabs her by the mouth, telling her to shush. She shows off a little hair doll figure, telling her it's blessed. Cecilia begs for help. We have to leave. The nun eyes her, letting her down. We will never leave here. As a result, she attempts something drastic to hopefully flee from her Christian captors. Mother is awoken to loud crying, and the others all rush to Cecilia's room, finding her baby area covered in blood. They argue over getting her to the hospital, and Cecilia moans that she doesn't want to die. With no choice, they load her in a car, Mama praying for her survival. On the way, they debate what to do if she dies. She is not looking so good. Well, then get to praying, fool! What else are you supposed to do? The ruse is quickly exposed, however, when Mama loses it over the bloody sheets. She notices a feather curiously amongst them and finds the source of the blood, a dead chicken hidden under the bed. She gives Sal a call to break the news, and I don't know why, but seeing cell phones out of nowhere kind of surprised me. I just thought this was in the past for some reason, especially with how the church is run. Just feels old, you know? Sal stares daggers at her and must know that she's faking. I understand, he says in a steely tone. He commands them to stop the car, and she makes a break for it, running off into the vast countryside. She doesn't get too far, and the father snatches her back up. They coldly strip her down and give her an aggressive scrubbing. Mama sneers, God will never forgive her, and gives her a good slap. They tie her to a wheelchair, assuring her that she's safe here. Yeah, I don't know if all the dead girls would agree with that. She demands to know what he did to her, and he reveals his wacky pseudoscience master plan. Remember that spike from earlier? Well, according to him, some people just see a rusty old nail, while others see it as proof of Jesus' sacrifice. Proof, eh? He shows off that they discovered actual blood and fragments of bone on the spike. In other words, a genetic code. They just had to crack it, which he dubs the key to resurrection. And it must be that Cecilia's DNA is some kind of match, which is why she was chosen in the first place. Yeah, again, I'm not sure how you could prove at all that that was Jesus' DNA. Is he on 23andMe or something? I don't mind swinging for the fences with crazy plots, you know, but this just doesn't really make any sense. Ah well, he wants to show off his work, taking her down to the forbidden catacombs, which house his makeshift genetic laboratory. There's tons of failed trials lined up in jars, 20 years of trial and error, Sal grumbles, for God to deliver the knowledge of a perfect fertile vessel. Cecilia is worried one of those is inside of her, and Sal corrects, no, those are the failures. What's in her is their first success. Well, that's good to know. He continues that he left genetics because of his unsavory methods. Luckily, the church understood how this simple procedure could bring salvation. She argues that he's playing God, which he disagrees with. You know how hard it is to watch a miracle die in the womb and fail God over and over? Yet he somehow found the strength to keep going, believing this is his calling. He feels her tongue, saying, and this is yours. To keep her from running again, they give her the cross brands as seen on the other lady, implying that she tried to escape at some point too. They lock her up in the room, and she cries to let her out, pounding futilely on the door. As she reaches her third trimester, it's time for another confession. She's more interested in the details of their plan. How long have they been tracking her? Since the ice accident? And what's gonna happen to her and the baby when it's born? Is it gonna save the world or end it? He looks over and she maintains that this is not God's work. He retorts, well, if it's not, then why doesn't he put a stop to this? Yeah, airtight logic there. Why don't you get off your big old cloud and stop me, God? There's a big ceremony outside. The group all gather with candles, singing Ave Maria. Cecilia is in bed looking miserable, the baby wriggling around around under the skin. The doc beams. There's only a few days left to go, and leaves to fetch some medicine. Mama gushes further over the baby, and with her distracted, Cecilia grabs a heavy cross and bonks her in the back of the head. She gives her several more meaty whacks, obliterating her face into a goopy mess. She painfully gets to her feet and her water breaks, meaning that baby is coming sooner rather than later. The cardinal is out watching over the group, and she gets a jump on him, choking him out with her rosary. He struggles against her but fails. The beads dig into his flesh and his neck snaps. Woo, that is a well-made rosary. Cecilia fights against her pregnancy pains and forces herself to keep going forward, grabbing that Jesus spike. She then returns to the lab, dumping highly flammable ethanol all over the equipment and specimens. She spins around to Sal there, and she clicks a flame on, stopping him in his tracks. He tries to convince her this won't solve anything. If she dies, they'll just find somebody else. The only easy way to end this is just have the savior already. More pangs, incapacitate her, and he grabs a lighter. She gets him in the head with a beaker, hobbling away. She locks him in the room, and he grabs her hair, yanking her back through the window. Ethanol seeps under the door, and she gets the lighter going, the fluid quickly going up in flames. Sal screams inside as the flames get more intense. She keeps watching on, then hearing a fire extinguisher going off. She's stopped by more pains, and Sal manages to bust the whole ass door down. Cecilia scrambles from the scene deeper into the dark catacombs. She tries to navigate the labyrinth, but has no idea where she's going. Sal is not too far behind, seeing his candlelight dancing in the rocks. She rounds a corner and shuts off her flashlight to hide. A few moments pass, and his light inches closer, growling her name. She waits for him to continue onwards and discovers Gwen's body. Well, no surprise there. She keeps going and spots daylight up ahead. Freedom! She runs as fast as she can into the tunnel, climbing her way up. Just about to make it, Sal drags her back down into the pit. He tears her shirt open and jams a scalpel right into her tummy, starting a makeshift C-section. She still has the spike and stabs it right through his neck, and he bleeds out. Well, took care of the big three. Good job, girl. She climbs outside, out into the never-ending wilderness, and falls to her knees. She screams hysterically, and we know that baby is ready to pop out. She keeps on pushing and yowling her head off. There's a sound of fluid sloshing, and the baby tumbles out onto the earth. Now, we don't get to see what it actually looks like, but based on her reaction, it's gotta be an abomination. Yeah, I don't know if wacky-ass genetic science is on the big man's radar. She gnaws off the umbilical cord and considers in confusion what to do now. She saunters over and grabs a big old rock, the baby writhing out of focus behind her. She takes the massive rock, lifting it high into the air. She unleashes a guttural screech and brings it down, obliterating her freshly born baby, its cries ceasing. Well, that is probably for the best, really. And most certainly the church's experiments were not God's design. It's gotta be evil. I mean, who knows what that thing is, and whatever DNA samples they were actually using. At least with Sal and the others gone, that means that their experiments are most likely permanently on hold. As for Cecilia, who knows what happens next? Although she is gonna have to get back to finding that ever-evasive purpose of hers, or maybe destroying this scheme was that, after all. That'll wrap things up for now, but why not keep the nun horror train going and check out my vid covering last year's sister death over there. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.